Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us as we talk all things faith, family, and fitness. A special thanks to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency for their support of Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community one family at a time. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. Hey, this is Merrill Hutchinson and the one and only, most precious. I like your pink shirt you're wearing today, honey.
Well, I'm glad we're not videoing because I definitely pulled my hair up and just like, you're still in pink clothes.
Well, heck yeah, man. You know, there's work to be done around here.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Linda?
Happy anniversary, hon.
Wait, honey, how long are you going to run this? I mean, we did an anniversary show already.
Last week, I know, but I'm still celebrating. I'm a woman.
You do this thing like it's like a month-long birthday or something like that.
Yeah, it's been 2 years. If you didn't listen to our show last week, this month, since we opened our doors of Rock Solid Families and since we went on the air for the first time at Rock Solid Radio. So it's our anniversary month.
So this is why, like, your birthday is August 20th, but your birth month. That's why
right.
You're mad at me the entire month except for the day of.
I actually have some August birthday friends that we all kind of celebrate.
It's a celebration.
We do like dinners in between our birthdays and stuff.
I have to admit, I'm probably worse.
You are.
Mine's the summer, and so I do the birthday summer.
Yeah.
All summer long.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, and you always get mad because you say it rolls into Father's Day and you get ripped off.
I get ripped off.
So,
yeah.
But if you haven't had a chance to listen to last week's show, please make sure you go back because we talk about really where we've been and where we're going. And it was fun, hun, just reminiscing and sharing the ways that we feel like God is really guiding and blessing. So
yeah.
It's a good
but
show.
This show, we even kind of started a little bit today, just kind of bantering back and forth.
I was dusting you off because you had a bunch of
off. Yeah.
You had a bunch of sawdust.
I like
all
the
over
way you dust me off there. You're smacking me in the head.
Yeah.
You know, I like to have a video of that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about something today that we've actually talked about before, but we're going to go into a little bit more elaboration and just the reason too that we're talking about is because it's a real thing. It's a big deal.
We've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, we see a lot of it with couples. We're going to be talking marriage type stuff today. We're going to be talking couples. And in particular, we're going to be talking something about, remember the crazy cycle? You want to explain a little bit about the crazy cycle?
Yeah, you know when you're in conflict with your spouse or significant other, it doesn't have to be your spouse, but you find things beginning to spiral out of control. You start putting each other down or pushing each other away or maybe shutting each other out. And, hun, I think you got to start asking a couple important questions. You start to ask, like, what in the heck is going on?
You don't ever say heck, though. Let's just,
I do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I cleaned it up a long way from college when I would slip. I remember when we first started teaching and we were in that world of like college students / adult now, teaching students, junior high school students.
Worse than that. Okay, we're going to get on a tangent here, but I remember when I went from the high school level of teaching to the elementary school.
Oh, yeah.
And, even at the high school level, not in front of my students, but in front of that staff, language was a lot more lax. And all of a sudden I go into the teacher's lounge at the elementary school and I got reprimanded.
Well, I'll never forget. This is definitely a tangent, but it kind of feeds into what we're going to talk about today with our mouths sometimes getting in trouble. But I remember my student teaching in a classroom of high school seniors, and I used the word pissed off, and Did you
just say that on Rock Solid Radio?
I did, and I got reprimanded because of just the connotation, and I was like, wow, we probably the cleaner thing.
Just lost 50% of our listeners, too.
No. But, at some point, we see people really think, like, how in the heck did we get to this point? Sometimes they even forgot, like, how and when that downward spiral started. And then we have couples walking in our office saying this, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Is this as good as it's going to get? Because if this is it, I'm not really willing to put up with it. And so that's what we're talking about today is that crazy cycle that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to get into talking about the crazy cycle, hopefully not get into the crazy cycle itself. But before we do, let's pay a few bills. Maxwell Construction has been with us since the very beginning of Rock Solid Radio. We are so thankful for their support. They care about their community and want to invest in strong and healthy families. Maxwell Construction was founded in 1988 by John Maxwell. Since that time, Maxwell Construction has grown and expanded to become among the most recognized commercial construction companies in the tri-state area. If you have any kind of commercial construction need, call Maxwell Construction today at 812-537-2200.
Yes, we also want to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency, and it began in 1981 by Jim Mansfield and is dedicated to serving individuals and businesses in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So if you have any kind of insurance needs, call Mansfield Insurance Agency at 1-800-230-3927.
Okay, so let's also talk about a couple of different things coming up. As this is our anniversary month,
See?
we are
You're
still
talking about it too.
Why? Because I'm reading my script right now. We're doing promotions here. And so with the anniversary month of October, we are offering $10 off on our fitness packages, which is essentially usually $70 for 10 classes. And through the month of October, we are running for $60 for 10 classes. So, it is that time to start thinking about how you're going to stay in shape when the weather gets nasty. Yeah. And this is a great time to join us. Don't worry if you've never been in a gym or done the exercise that we do with finishing. We take you where you are and try to get you where you want to be. So come join us.
Yeah. And, we get into this topic, hon, of the crazy cycle a little bit more. Please remember, if you're hearing us today, if you are hearing your story in our message thinking, that's us, please know there is hope. There is help. We see clients, 6 days a week in our St. Leon office and around the country, really, via Zoom. So please don't give up the ship. I want you to keep listening. We want you to reach out for help. We also have a wealth of other resources available on our website, including our blogs and the library of really 2 years worth of podcasts for Rock Solid Radio that can help strengthen your marriage and your family.
Yeah. So hopefully good resources there, and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. So let's get into a little bit of the background. I think in starting off, we want to give full disclosure and credit to where we come up with the whole phrase crazy cycle. So we were trained back, I don't even know how many years ago now, 8, 9, 10 years ago, into the work of Dr. Emerson Eggerich. Yeah. And he wrote the book, Love and Respect. And in the book, Love and Respect, Emerson does a fantastic job of getting into that whole idea of how marriages get into what we call the crazy cycle, which is basically a negative feedback loop. And it loops, and essentially meaning that it just keeps looping back around, and one side feeds the other side. And in nature, perpetual motion machines don't actually exist, but in relationships, this seems like, how does this perpetually keep going on? It does, because we feed it. Right. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Yeah.
We kind of talk about like the hamster wheel, the hamster wheel just kind of spinning. And really, he came up with this concept of love and respect connection from a single passage of scripture, which is Ephesians 5:33, which says, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And so, we talked about this, back in September of 2019. I encourage you to go back and listen to that show, because we really talked more about the yin and the yang, the he said, she said, to the two different approaches and how we look at our marriage. And so we kind of are feeding off of that, kind of building off of that, and really going a little deeper, like you said, into the whole crazy cycle.
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit, and we'll talk about what our job is in this, but I think it's important that you won't understand why you have to do this until you see what happens when you don't do it, all right? So oftentimes you can read this in a book, but you won't understand it until you really see the negative side of it. And so the negative side is, recently I worked with a couple and been married for 45 years. And they would say the last 15 to 20 years. Now think about that. The last 15 to 20 years, they just kind of were doing life together. It's not like they hated each other. It's not like in fact, they didn't want a divorce, but they did find just each other annoying, tiresome being around each other. And they at least both recognize that, man, if, like you said before, hon, if this is what it is all about. If this is the best, then I don't know if this is worth it.
Yeah.
And so they came in to us, and you could see in this particular case, these were two well-intentioned people. They were very responsible on multiple levels of life. But what they constantly did over time, and this is a little bit like the old idea of Chinese water torture. It's not like one big blow up where everybody can see, oh, we were fighting about X. Instead, it's just this little torment, this little punishment of torture that slowly breaks each other down. And what happens is, and this kind of gets into the actual work, ladies, as we talked about in Ephesians 5:33, ladies want to be loved. And we are, as men, we are commanded to love our wife. Love is not natural for us men. Respect is. Respect is when I work with a group of men or when I'm hanging out with men, I don't want them to love me. I want them to respect me. And so we very much tap into a natural understanding of respect. But love is a more challenging idea, at least to demonstrate or show.
Yeah.
And so because as a man, I don't always know how to love you the right way. And what is the right way? The right way is how you want to be loved,
Right.
not how I think you should be loved.
Right.
And in the couple that I was working with, that was exactly the problem. They were loving and trying to show respect the way they thought they should do it for the other person.
Yeah.
And they were missing the mark on a daily basis.
Yeah. It's funny, hon, when you were talking about the Chinese water torture, I just looked up Proverbs 27:15. A quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaky roof in a rainstorm.
Ooh.
And so,
Ooh.
that's what you're talking about, that little, and I am commanded to respect Merle because he needs respect. And in fact, he speaks respect. Respect is a language he understands, but when I speak to him in disrespectful ways, his tendency is to react with unloving words back to me. And so around and around it goes in this crazy cycle, each saying things that were the opposite of what really we're needing and hoping for.
So, I think it's really important right here. Those are good words that we just said in terms of description out of the textbook. But I think it would be really valuable if we actually gave an example of how I felt disrespected or how you felt unloved. Because I think those are the areas that we go, oh, you mean that was disrespect? Right? And so for me, for example, disrespect for me is when I have an idea or a suggestion, and without even you thinking about it, just an impulse or what I would think of as a knee-jerk reaction, you kind of immediately kind of just blow it out of the water. Like, oh, that's ridiculous.
I've never
that's
done
stupid.
that before.
Hun, this show's going to go in a different direction if we're going to go down that road.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah. And so the idea, not that what I would suggest is right or wrong, it's just how it would be valued.
Right.
Okay. Or in this case, respected. And so when we see this all the time with men, and you're going to share the lady side of this in a bit here, but the idea that as a man, if I discipline the kids and you correct me on how I did it, if I suggest how we do something around the house and you correct me, men are about respect. That's the type of love, if you could say it that way. That's the type of love that feeds our fire. And when I feel disrespected, most men I know, hun, will not go into a fight with their wife. Most men, and this we've talked about this before, most good men, because they want to honor the marriage and the relationship, will just sort of bow down and go, whatever, and go silent.
Yeah.
But knowing that they felt disrespected.
Right.
And a slow drip of that, eventually they stop weighing in. They stop helping disciplining the kids.
Right.
They stop weighing in on the conversation of what to buy for the house or do around the house. They just say, give me my punch list and I'll start doing it.
Yeah, yeah. And, and I talk to a lot of women who feel unloved by their husband. And it's because they have not shared with them in a loving way what they need, or in a respectful way, I should say. So, for instance, hun, I know a lot of guys just love to physically touch their wives in, different ways.
I don't know if I like where this one's going.
Well, think about
and now
this.
we're going to break for a commercial.
No, I mean that they're playful, right? They're playful, and the woman doesn't see that as loving. They see it as unloving. They see it as, you think I'm an object, or
I'm a slow learner. I'm a slow learner.
But here's the deal. It's really important that the wife expresses back to the husband what makes her feel loved and what makes her feel disrespected or unloved. And so if you're like, don't touch me again like that, okay? Or that makes me feel uncomfortable, or it doesn't make me feel loved, then that's the way to handle it in a respectful way versus, coming off very nasty, or you're not getting any, almost like you should know what makes me happy and what doesn't make me happy. I know, hun, that I used to correct you when you would fold the towels the different way than I did.
That was, on the disrespect side
yeah,
of things.
And so you were trying to show me love by coming in and doing things to help me. And I came back in a very disrespectful way and corrected you, over-trumped you what you were doing. And I'm not going to get your help very often.
Yeah, how much longer did I fold towels? And again, well, until we've had the conversation to understand.
Yeah.
And I can think of times like this when you, and we know this, all right, this is not news to anyone. Ladies like to express their feelings and their emotions. And so when you have things going on in your day, you can come home and you can talk a lot about that. And I'm more quiet, or I'm more, let's just get to the solution. And so you would come home and start talking about different things in your day. And I start with a comment like this: well, why don't you just, in other words, I'm going to suggest how you should correct this problem.
Right. You're trying to fix it.
Yeah, I'm going to fix it. And in the meantime, you're like, I'm totally missing your heart. You didn't ask me to fix it, but I feel like it needs to be fixed.
Right.
That way we can shut the conversation down, so I don't have to keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is not showing you the love that you want. You just want to be heard.
Yeah, for sure. And so, Dr. Eggerich compares this to tanks of air that we need to breathe and live on. And women need a love just as if they need air to breathe. So picture, if you will, the wife has an air hose leading to her love tank. When her husband steps on her air hose by, like you said, trying to fix it or shut her down or kind of minimize her pain or whatever, it some way comes off very unloving. You can kind of see her deflate right before his eyes. He's stepping on her air hose and she's crying out, I feel unloved right now. Why are you doing this to me? And so, and I've seen women respond in such bizarre, crazy ways. It's almost like they're being smothered and they can't breathe, but they don't have the words to express, like, why are they so upset? Sometimes they don't even get it. Why am I upset right now?
Right.
And so, they hop on this crazy cycle with the wife doing anything she can to try to catch her breath. But all the while, she is strangling the relationship even more by the way she responds.
Right, because then she has I'll just say, a slight distaste for him at that time because she was hurt.
A little bitterroot.
And when we talk about hurt, it's sometimes so much easier to flat out see an open wound. When you see a bruise or just a slight hurt, you don't always recognize it. You may not, even if you were the one who received it, you may not even recognize that it was a full-blown hurt. You just kind of go, well, I didn't get acknowledged there. And you even minimize it, but the resentment seed or root, as you talked about, begins to grow. I
see a lot of this, by the way, hon, between men and women when it comes to working outside the home or not working outside the home. Whether you're just quote unquote the housewife or the caretaker of the kids, and man, that husband comes out with some really sharp words of like, what do you do all day? Like, you should be able to handle this. The house should be cleaner. And man, it is really demeaning and unloving to a woman who really has worked her butt off, and she just shuts down on him.
Yeah. Yeah. She shuts down, and then she doesn't know how to show him the respect the way he's looking for. He doesn't feel like she's worth showing love and demonstrating and saying things that recognize the love for her. And so, like you said, the cycle begins. So, it's, as we talked about before, it's easy to recognize this when it's a big old blow up, and you can see right away who stepped on whose air hose and how quickly they were suffocating.
Yeah.
But it is so much more difficult to see the subtle.
Yeah.
The subtle. I didn't step on the air hose completely. I just kinked it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That's really, there's two different kind of crazy cycles here, hon. And I think that more than not, there are those that are on this low key crazy, where the crazy cycle can just present itself in kind of very stealth, low key ways, where you both are trying to keep the lid on it. You know, that was us, I believe. You know, when I read this book, I felt like it opened my eyes and really helped me realize that I didn't mean to, but my sarcasm, my critical words, my tone was sometimes so disrespectful. And so we were both in education and ministry. You know, we helped couples who were spinning out of control. And the last thing we wanted was it to be we wanted to be a statistic, but we had some bad habits that kind of threw us in there.
Now, Hun, I do want to touch a little bit on sarcasm, because sarcasm is something that's very accepted in our culture. And you and I both have a tendency to hone our sarcastic skills.
No.
Linda, you're being sarcastic. And so what we find happens or is acceptable in our workplace and even acceptable in our home a lot of days is not acceptable every day or every time, especially when I know I can pull a little sarcasm, but also drop a little bit of a negative smack on you, right? And so I would do that by calling you certain names.
Like my mother's name?
Well, I didn't want to go there, but, you know.
Because I didn't want people to think like you're calling me some nasty, I mean, to me it hurt, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, and again, and no different than if you called me my dad's name, which, I mean, you would never do that. But if you did.
You have the same name, honey.
Oh. Well, yeah, but you had a senior to it.
Yeah.
So the idea here is us recognizing, and I think that that's a big part of this too. Like, it's very, very difficult for one person to recognize that they've been feeding into the negative loop and stop doing it, and the other person continue. So we always advocate, and this is the benefit of coming in as a couple, if we both work on this, we can both start to catch ourselves on doing it.
So you say that, but I know there's a lot of people out here listening that will not be able to get their spouse to walk in a door.
Right.
Okay. And we have seen the power, even when the spouse does not know that you've been talking to somebody or that you're trying something new, they see a difference. And especially in women, okay, because I work with the women, and I will tell them, I'll challenge them, go home and treat your husband with unconditional respect all weekend long. And they'll look at me like he doesn't deserve it. And I was like, I don't care if he deserves it or not. The key is that you do it, and that he will see. And he does see the difference, the tone. For example, hon, here's just an example I used to do all the time. I would say, hey, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? And you're like, I don't care. And I'm like, no, you pick. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm looking, how about Longhorn? And I'll be like, no, not Longhorn. How about like Olive Garden? And I would override your opinion.
Yeah.
And, so in other words, and then you would look at me like, why did you even ask?
Why do you even
right?
ask? Yeah.
But if I literally asked your opinion, like, hey, what would you want for dinner tonight? And you're like, hey, how about we stay home and have meatloaf? I'm like, sounds good. And I run with that. You're like, whoa, did you just ask me my opinion and like actually run with it?
Asked it and then honored it.
Honored it, yes. That's the key.
Because honor is, we both want to feel honored. Feeling honored is when the other person is being lifted up. And to put it in very simple terms, I want to be the king of the castle and you want to be the queen of the castle. And as long as we are both working to put each other in that position, that doesn't mean falsely inflating by any means. That means that we are working together as a team. And so I want you as the other part of this team to be working at your best.
Yeah. And I think this is a good place, hon, for a disclaimer here. We're not talking about abuse.
Right.
Okay. We're not talking about somebody beating on you and like, oh, that's great, do the other side. Or, verbally being cussed at, like you said, you were calling me names, and just sitting there and taking it. I'm not talking about that. But God has called us, and man, this, by the way, is such a radical thought. God has called us to unconditionally respect, especially your spouse, is not, please hear me, is not conditional to whether or not they are loving back to you or respectful back to you, okay? That's where our culture is missing the mark right now, I believe. That's why we don't have respect for authority, teachers, parents, you name it.
Well, the unconditional part, hon, is so much of what you're leaning on there, because our phrase is, I'll give respect when he is respectable.
When he's earned it, yeah.
And I'll love her when she is lovable.
Yeah.
And I do want to reinforce something that you said there. This is all based on the very start of the foundation of that I have two good, well-intended people. This is not, as you said before, in a situation where somebody is flat out abusive, or somebody just refuses to honor you in any way at any time. Because we do know people who stay in bad situations, and it just, if it's not pulled in and corrected, the other person sees no reason to change.
Right.
And so it is very possible for one person to start trying to break this crazy cycle.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. We've seen it. But man, it's so much better when we can pull both people in.
Yep.
And providing they are coachable, right, as we've talked about many times, to point out, hey, do you guys want to win as a couple?
Right.
Do you want to win as a team? Let's both start acknowledging what we could do to do better.
Right. Yeah. And we talked about the low-key crazy cycle. There is that high-intensity spiraling, right, where you see, that's where we see a lot of the couples coming in, and there's a lot of angry remarks, a lot of biting sarcasm, some shouting, sometimes worse. But the point is, whatever the intensity level of your crazy cycle, one or both of you are doing dumb, crazy things that drive one another crazy, right? And so many times, spouse may be doing things that they really honestly don't even know about. They don't even get. Or sometimes it's deliberate. Maybe they know what pushes your buttons or gets under your skin, and they're doing that intentionally at this point. But sometimes it's really just because they're reacting to a lack of love on her part or a lack of respect on his part.
Hun, let's go down the road of, and maybe even play it out a little bit like between you and I. So let's say that you did disrespect me. Maybe you said something like, oh, that's a dumb idea. Why are we even wasting our time on that? Okay, you said that to me. The point is, okay, what do I actually do with that?
Yeah.
All right, because cycles create habits. And so even though we're giving this talk today, that doesn't mean you're going to listen to this and immediately just change your way.
Right.
And so, because habits are built and responses become natural, just instinctive sort of reactions. And so I think that the important part here is, first off, when you disrespect me now, that I don't keep it in me.
Right.
Very, very important.
Let it brew and stew.
Yeah, this should not be a guessing game between the two of you as to whether
Did
you
that
offended
make you
me.
mad?
Yeah. Instead, that I just, and again, and this is why it's important that we're both on the same page, so that we're not going to elicit an argument here.
Yeah.
But instead, that when you basically took me down a notch, and I was bothered by that, instead of sitting quietly on it, it is good for me to think about it, okay? And then when emotions calm, and we always talk about that, do not come back with an emotional response, because that will elicit the cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? But when I calm, to say, you know, hon, when we were talking earlier, and I made the recommendation that we do such and such, and you just blew it out of the water. Honestly, I mean, that really kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
That
hurt,
bothered me that you did that. You didn't even hear me out. And so at that point, I did an active interruption of the cycle.
Right.
All right. I actively tried to put the brake on it.
Right. And instead of stewing on it and letting it build and build and build.
Yeah, because if I stewed on it,
yeah.
the next time you were trying to be, or you were seeking some love or just whatever, I would probably either withhold or be sarcastic and nasty back, and just enough that it fed the negative loop.
Yeah. Recently, I had a couple, and he would say, I try to engage with her to see how she's doing, and she'll be like, fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And she admits, like, I'm fine probably 7 out of the 10 times, but man, that 7th or 8th time, she blows. Like, I'm fine. And like, she'll blow up, and he'll be like, where did that come from? Well, it's because she's held it in, and she hasn't kind of addressed the issue at that time or around that time, instead of just letting it stew and build. You know, but here's the deal, hun. The crazy cycle does not mean you've made a horrible mistake and married the wrong person. Hun, every couple has their moments when they're faced with storms and stressors. Sometimes it's about what happened to you at work. Well, not that, because we're working together now.
Well, but actually, it is about what happened to me at work.
But, you know, there's so many people who will come home and they'll carry that stress of work or something that their boss said to them, and all of a sudden their wife will say, what do you want for dinner? And he explodes. And so we all have a tendency to lash out and at the people around us, the people we love the most, and try to protect ourselves when we're hurt or under stress.
Yeah. So, hun, as we get ready to try to start to bring things down a little bit and land the plane, I also think it's really important that not only do I not want to keep you in the guessing game as to whether you offended me, and I don't want you to not express that I showed you hurt rather than a love. I also think it's really, really important that we have conversation going forward within the relationship about what it looked like if I loved you the way you want to be loved.
Right.
In other words, I don't want to be guessing. Yeah. Right. And you shouldn't be sitting there going, well, I wonder what he'll do this time. I wonder if he'll hit the mark or miss the mark. Yeah. And I shouldn't be wondering as I'm driving home with this new idea, well, I wonder what you'll say about this.
Right.
You know, instead, to actually have as much of these conversations up front. You know, when you do this, I feel respected. When you do this, I feel disrespected.
And when we tell couples, I tell couples all the time, what is praised is repeated. Yeah. If he did something for you that really meant a lot to you, tell him.
Yes.
That meant a lot to me when you took me out to dinner or when you rubbed my back or whatever it is. You know, you both are responsible for your response. And as a matter of fact, we have said it many times here on Rock Solid Radio, your response is your responsibility. So the fact that you're on the crazy cycle is evidence that you're both responding poorly. And it's really a matter of the mature one, who's going to step back, get off the cycle and recognize, call it what it is, and be willing to do something different.
Yeah, mature and one who can recognize when their emotions are tugging on them, and they arrest their emotion and then put it into logical thought. And that is a maturity, you know. And so sometimes, you know, we'd like to stew on it for a while, almost like we're entitled to be angry at our spouse. Well, you are. You know, no one's going to say you can't be, but who wins?
How's that working for you?
How's that working for you?
Yeah.
And so our point is to call it out, and we want the marriage to be a win-win situation, not to see if the husband can win or the wife can win over top of each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we see so often, right? Yeah. Like, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and that just feeds the negative cycle.
What I love is the mature spouse will step back, they will swallow their pride, and they will own their part. They'll literally come to their spouse and say, hey, you know, last week was an ugly week for us, and I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings or I didn't listen to you. And so, you know, and try to begin to love them and respect them the way they need, you know. Things begin to change.
Is this the hint that you would like me to be more mature more often?
No, we've come a long way on this
one.
And I will say, I was bad.
Depending on where you are in this whole growth and recognition, you know, hun, there's been many times that you've apologized to me first because it weighed on you. You called yourself out first and made the apology. And then there's been times that I said, hey, I'm just sorry for being a jerk yesterday or this morning or whatever. And so you just get better, and don't count how fast or how often you bow down.
Right. Don't keep score.
No, we can't go down that road because you are essentially then doing the negative loop
right.
again.
Yeah. we say to people all the time, if you keep score, you both lose.
Yeah, every time. Yeah.
It takes guts to go around a different tree and pick up different apples. It feels scary. It feels awkward at first. If you've gotten into some bad habits of how you speak or respond to one another. But hun, I'm just telling you, I have seen it. It can change like that. I have literally had couples coming in saying, wow. I had one the other day that says, I feel like I have a new girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it's like, because you've both committed to making changes.
Yeah,
so
I just received a thank you from a couple, and it was just this couple was deeply into the negative loop of the crazy cycle, and just they didn't use the term here, but they just wrote me a card and they just said, we want to thank you for the excellent coaching we received. Our marriage is well on its way to healthy. We continue to utilize the tools you taught us. And so the tools that were taught were really nothing more than recognizing and owning how you're feeding the negative cycle versus how I can actually feed the positive loop on this as well.
Yeah. So, as we close, there is hope for your marriage. His name is Jesus. Loving and respecting your spouse unconditionally is not easy. It does take commitment. But, hun, I would just say it is so worth it. And we've seen the change because, honestly, that's the way Jesus treats us. No matter how mean and nasty and how much we reject him, his love for us and his respect for us never wavers. And so, man, if you don't have that common bond as a couple, if we're trying to build our marriage without the instruction manual of God's word or of Jesus's example, it's tough. Good luck. We got to look to God and his word. Follow the example of Christ. That's how we get a marriage that will not just survive, the storms, but thrive even in the middle of them.
Yeah. Hun, I would also say in this challenge, one of the fears that you and I have when we're working with couples, and we do this kind of in a subconscious way in our own mind, we kind of measure how hardened is their heart or are their hearts when they come into us. Because the more you get beat down, and the longer it goes on, the more hardened and callous you become. And so you get into a survival mode. And even if you've had this marriage going for 30 years, you're just hardened and you just kind of plow through. And so one of the things I think is very important is that both you and your spouse look and see how hard and cold your heart has become. You can do that by simply saying, what's the quality of my relationship? Is this as good as it gets? Kind of comments.
Have I done everything that I can?
Right. And then asking yourself, have I done everything that I can? And we can guarantee you haven't done everything. None of us have done everything we can, because that would be total submission to Christ. And if we did total submission to Christ, we would be totally submitting to our spouse.
And we'd find life change. Yeah. Yeah. So, I do believe that regardless of how hardened your heart is, man, if you turn and just admit that, hey, I haven't done it all right, I do have some things I could change, God can do some amazing things. And we have seen that, hon. We have seen hearts melt, and we have seen lives changed, and we have seen marriages restored from some of the ugliest situations, whether it be infidelity, betrayal, lies, you name it. And so his name is Jesus, and that's going to be the difference maker. So as we close, we just want to say, as we begin year 3 of Rock Solid Families, Rock Solid Radio, we just want to again say thank you to our sponsors for helping to make Rock Solid Radio possible. Thank you to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency for their support. And thank you again for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard on today's show, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency. If you have questions you'd like answered on our show, or you want to chime in on something you heard, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merrill and I, thanks for tuning in to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time.